they invited me to be at this event. And I was like, why don't you invite Gavin Wood?
Okay.
Check. Media companies or journalism, they are not there to tell the truth. They are there to tell the story. This is not new, Jay. Oh, yes, I know. You're talking about Barca.
The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys, blasting off with Ursula 0'Kuinghttons. She is the Director of Partnerships and Communications with the Web3 Foundation. She has also connected this program with some of the greatest interviews we've had. Ursula, it's great to finally get you on the show. Thanks for being a part of Space Monkeys.
Thank you, Jay. It's a little bit weird for me to be in this side.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the other side talking to you about some probabilistic interviews.
Yes, you have.
And so now to be sitting here in Paris, well, we are witnesses one of the biggest revolutions so far.
We hardly made it back to this hotel. Well, why don't we just start off with talking about some of these partnerships you've brought to the table for us? And maybe we might have
And the one that we didn't.
And the one you didn't. Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
So which one really excites you?
The most at this moment, it's frequency parachains.
Yeah.
I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you or some of you, you might be hearing about what is frequency, which is the decentralized social media under the umbrella of Project Liberty. And this is a project that I've been working with Frank McCourt's team for almost a year and a half.
And who's Frank?
Frank McCourt, he's an American businessman. His career started building, and he's a real estate builder.
Yes.
And now he wants to be a tech builder on how to decentralize social media. It's been very established in the US and in Europe as well. He's the owner of the Olympique de Marseille, which is I believe that the second largest football team here in France.
Wild. How did you come across this social network blockchain? And why is it important to you?
My former boss, which is Vivian Schiller, she's one of the biggest PR persona in the US. I was very blessed to work with her in a project which was called Civil Media Company. We were experimenting with blockchain and journalism very early on in 2016.
Right.
So she reached out to me and she said, hey, there's a man that I need to introduce you to you. It will be interesting for you to meet this guy. I was like, who is him? And when Vivian talks, you need to listen. So I said, who is this man? And he was like, Frank McCourt. I was like, I have no idea. It doesn't ring a bell to me. So, well, let's figure out. And so she told me about him. He told me about the project. That day, it was called Unfinished because they had a big event in New York City at the Shed, which is this really cool cultural center at the Hudson Yards.
Hudson Yards, yeah.
And so they wanted to create ideas. So they were invited academics, journalists, influencers from different fields, from the technology fields to the financial fields as well.
Yeah.
But they already had this idea and this protocol, which is called DSMP. And I think that you have had Braxton in your program. He's the creator of DSMP. So they have this and they wanted to connect this with a blockchain. Right. So they were searching for different blockchains. They were in Ethereum, then they were to research on Solana, Cardano, I mean, all. So it happens that they invited me to be at this event, and I was like, why don't you invite Gavin Wood? Because I was traveling to the US, I was with Gavin and Peter Marek. So we had this meeting, and Frank introduced the project and their idea on how he was aiming to change the social media landscape. At that time, Twitter was on the hands of Jack Dorsey.
Right.
And so we found it interesting, and I found it fascinating. I thought, like, wow, this is so needed. I mean, social media is a journalistic tool.
You see one of the opportunities here is monetizing content.
Exactly. First was to convince them to build on Polkadot.
Okay.
Check. They created frequency, which is a new parachain.
Yeah.
The second, how to organize more engagement together on marketing, on communications, and to create events. That was Davos. We had a big presence on Davos last May of last year.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of the programming with them. And a lot of people in Davos, even until now, they're like, oh, why you guys were in Davos this year? Last year was such a great, it was the talk of the town. People were coming because of the content, what we were creating. And then we had this interview on stage with Gavin and Frank. And then they have evolved and finished. It's not anymore. They sunset that project, and now they have Project Liberty, which is like a foundation. They always said that Project Liberty is like the Web3 Foundation. And then they created the frequency parachain, and they have a new CEO at Project Liberty. And right now we are moving forward to expand this partnership with them. And then the most important thing.
Yes.
Frank has invested in this social media, which is based in California, which is called We.
That's right.
We. And this social media has already 20 million users.
Yes, that's right.
So they're going to be integrated with Polkadot. The S&P, Polkadot, of frequency.
So your job encompasses so much, right? It's making these connections to start, and then you have the convincing part of it, and then you have the rollout of the plan as far as communications go, right? Where did you learn these skills?
Because I've been reported.
You've been reporting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that helps you a lot. I mean, talking to people, you know that, because you talk to a lot of people.
Yeah, of course.
So I started very early in my career. When I was like 18, I was intern at Reuters news agency.
Okay.
Then I was hired by Reuters. And then I moved to El País newspaper, which is the largest newspaper from Spain. And I would say the Spanish-speaking world. I was very curious. And I really like humans and discovering what the humans, everyone has a story to tell. And I was fascinated by that, always, very early in my career.
So as a longtime reporter, how do you feel about this corruption of media, right? We have these Twitter files coming out all the time showing this massive government censorship and influence over the stories that journalists have been telling for the last several years. How does that make you feel?
That is a good question. I think this is no new, Jay. We have always lived with this. It's just the fact that right now we are more aware of this.
Right.
But media companies or journalism, they are not there to tell the truth. They are there to tell the story, which is different.
Absolutely.
Not the truth.
Yeah.
And story.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Because that way you will see journalism in a different perspective. So I think it's needed. Journalism is needed because for our democracy, because they curated a lot of the news that we need to know. We need to be informed.
Sure.
News is power. And but the reality that the last 10 years, the media industry, they've been shrinking on budget, shrinking on people. There are less and less journalists on newsrooms. And we have seen the reality of this, that the media companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, by the way.
Yeah.
Some of them, like the big ones.
Sure.
They're multi-billion. They all have an agenda. Most of them.
What's your experience with journalists understanding the blockchain?
That is a great question. Because I don't know, maybe you know because I have told you many times. I arrived into the whole ecosystem on blockchain very early on in 2012. Well, I hear about Bitcoin in 2010 in Israel, but I didn't understand what they were talking about.
Yeah,
like
sure.
Bitcoin was like a name, like it didn't ring a bell. I mean, zero connection into my neurons and brain.
Yeah, like us all, really.
Yeah. And so then I was in Phoenix, in Arizona. I was living there, and I was doing some classes of business journalism at Arizona State University, and they invited me for a meetup.
Okay.
On Bitcoin. I was like, oh, yeah, I have heard this word. I didn't have friends in Phoenix, Arizona. I was pregnant. I was like 8 months.
Wow.
That was 2012. So I didn't have much of a social life. I was pretty alone. that time in that area. So I didn't have a community. And I went to one of these meetups, and everyone would look like, oh, this crowd looks a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But it's so fucking fascinated what they're telling.
Sure.
So I couldn't understood what they said. I mean, it took like 3 different meetups for me to connect a little bit of these dots.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, I got fascinated because of the sense of community.
Yeah.
I have to admit that was my first reality with the technology.
That's interesting. Okay.
And secondly, I was like, this is a technology that could resolve a lot of the issues that we're facing with journalism, like trust, because it's really hard to trust.
Yeah.
And journalism is facing a huge problem with trust right now. And then the financial.
Yeah, of course.
Because the business model in journalism is just out of reality. They're still living on ads. And and they've been doing that for the last 100 years.
Right.
So I thought, well, this is something for journalism. And then I was attending different meetups, and then I met people. I met Joe Lubin, and I mentioned it to him. Oh, this is great.
Joe Lubin, founder of Ethereum.
One of the
co-founders.
Yes. Then they invited me to be part of a civil media company out in New York.
Wow.
And it was the first company building this project. And we created 18 newsrooms in the US. I traveled all over, speaking with journalists, with editors, and trying to understand the issues of journalism.
Okay.
Especially the local journalism in the US, which was a big, big, big thing.
Sure.
And then 2 of the 18 newsrooms that we created, they're still alive. They're doing pretty good. One is on Denver, which is the Colorado Sun.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And it was founded by one of the very well-known journalists. He has a Pulitzer and everything. He's very well-known. And then another one is on Chicago Block Club.
Wow.
They're very strong.
Okay. And they're not using Ethereum or blockchain technology anymore,
No,
right?
they did with Civil. They did use Ethereum.
And what did you use the blockchain for with Civil?
Because we were creating TCRs, which was so complicated.
Okay.
So complicated. I mean, we were too early, and we were super complicated. When
TCR
is token curated registries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what we were trying to create a governance model with a token, so people, I mean, it could be a bridge between consumers or readers and journalists. Mm-hmm. And the TCR was in the middle of all of this, but it was so complicated. It wasn't easy. And MetaMask was in very early stage, and it was difficult. We were helping journalists to open accounts on MetaMask, and they forgot their seats, they forgot everything. So it was such a disaster.
Right.
And then on top of that, Ethereum is great. It's a great technology, but it has a big, big, big issue, which is the gas price.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Of course.
Until you don't touch Ethereum, you don't really know how hard it is to scale with Ethereum.
Right. Yeah.
We created the smart contracts for different newsrooms, Mm-hmm. And we were trying to solve one problem, but we were creating another one.
Right, of course.
So people didn't know how much money they would have to pay at the end of the month. And it was unsustainable.
Yeah, totally. Interesting. So how about nowadays? Mostly crypto journalism is about, a lot of it's about regulation. A lot of it's about big projects being taken down. What's the temperature of journalism in crypto now, you think?
Yeah, that is a good question, because even crypto journalism right now is struggling. I mean, look, CoinDesk, all of the issues that they were facing like last December with their investors.
They're pulling out?
No, they're not. I mean, I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, okay.
But I think that they have done a terrific job. I mean, they're the one who broke the story with FTX.
Right.
Ian Allison, he's such a great journalist, and it didn't come from mainstream media. It came from crypto media.
Right.
And so crypto media, for the first time, they got the respect from the mainstream media. Even Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, they quote them for some sources.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is the first time that we have seen this.
Okay.
the good things of crypto media, they're more open to experiment with NFTs, DAOs. Decrypt Media, they created this pop DAO for journalism. They're not afraid because they understand the technology. While traditional media or legacy media, they're super skeptical. They discovered like Bitcoin is up, Bitcoin is down.
Yeah, right.
FTX,
basically.
Terra, all of the bad things about the ecosystem. That's for them their story.
So how do we get the mainstream media involved in a helpful way?
Education.
Okay.
Still a lot of education. We're still way ago to go with education. And I think that as soon as this technology will be evolving with real use cases, they will understand it the better, because until now it has been super abstract. You know, something that you see it, but you can touch it, and that happened to me with Ethereum. Well, Ethereum is great, but when I touched Ethereum, it was like, oh, it has a lot of shortcomings in order to scale.
Oh, that's interesting. We actually really need to get people to use it and report on their experiences of actually using it, right?
Yes. Yes.
You were involved in an interesting partnership to be never happened in the end. You were trying to wrap Polkadot into one of the biggest, most robust communities on the planet.
Oh, yes, I know. You're talking about Barca.
Barca. So Barcelona.
Barcelona
the
football
biggest,
team.
hugest football clubs. Is it the biggest football club in the world, is it?
Yeah, on community-wise, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Polkadot was in talks with them for a good long while. And that was another partnership that you brought to the table.
Yeah.
What happened there? What's the connection? How did you bring Barcelona to the table?
Yeah. I mean, because I'm Spaniard.
Yeah? Well, you just all know each other?
No. I've been reporter. Don't forget that. I've been journalist.
Yeah.
So I've been talking. I mean, when you're a journalist, you're always curious. So being a former journalist, it gave you a lot of skills on how to research and see opportunities.
Yeah.
So I was in Barcelona at that time. Alex Puig, it's a person that I know for the last 10 years. He's was one of the biggest crypto advocates very early on in Spain.
Okay.
He invited me for a small event with crypto people. And we were like just experimenting and foreseeing the future on Web3. And there I saw another old friend, which is Kirsa Salomon. Right now he's the director of the Blockchain Center for Catalonia. He's an entrepreneur as well. He's been experimenting with crypto in different ways. And so he said, wait a minute, Ursula, are you a Polkadot now? I was like, yeah, I'm a Polkadot. Wait, but I love Polkadot. I'm like, oh yeah, me too. I love Polkadot. Because I have seen different blockchains and I love Polkadot.
Yeah, Polkadot's awesome.
And so he said, will you have time tomorrow to come to the Barcelona for a meeting? I was like, really? What?
Sure.
Tomorrow? Yeah. I can make it. So that was the time when Barcelona was struggling. Well, they're still struggling financially. So they wanted to experiment with blockchains on NFTs, on how to create a new business revenue for their team.
Yeah. Think about that community you could tokenize.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So we had this meeting. It was very nice, very instructive. They needed us for innovation, but they couldn't figure out how to make this happen. They took so long. And they even offer us the sleeve and the main T-shirt.
Yes, yeah. I think we saw some mock-ups or something about that, yeah.
They leaked. They
did
this.
leak.
Yeah, they did.
They leaked it.
Of course, they do that all the time. I mean, that's the market, you know? They always leak news. Yeah, we didn't succeed. It was around 6 months, I think. Peter Murray was flying back and forth between New York and Barcelona as well.
Yeah, I think that's a story he's going to tell one day, actually. So
yeah, he was pretty. Oh yeah. He wants to have a podcast because I'm telling you the surface of all of this.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of layers.
We're looking forward to that story more. But that's fascinating. So unfortunately, that one didn't work out.
didn't work out.
How about any on the horizon? Maybe you can't say specifically who you're speaking to right now, but can you tell us about the industry or organizations, what they might do?
I mean, for me, coming from the media industry, I have always seen how fascinated is to create movements through media.
Yeah.
And this is something that we discussed like a year ago with the Project Liberty or Unfinished team that time, and how to create different initiatives for movements. And one of the biggest movements and trends that we have seen lately is the music industry. Well, just recently, Polkadot had this partnership with Bitpro, which is huge.
Okay.
But since last year, I've been in conversation with Primavera Sound. I don't know if you're familiar with Primavera Sound. It's a huge festival, music festival. One of the biggest lineup in Europe, from Barcelona as well.
Okay, nice.
But now they have expanded into Latin America, like Argentina, Chile, Colombia, LA, and Madrid. And for the first time ever this year, they're organizing Primavera Pro in Madrid, which is more like the business side of the music. And they're bringing the CEO of Warner Music, CEO of top music industries.
Wow.
So, yeah, I wanted to do something with them.
Okay, but you're still working it out. But
Yes,
there's some sort
that's
of
what I'm
something happening there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you could talk about?
And Sonar as well. Sonar is an electronic music festival, huge as well. From Barcelona as well.
As well. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But you're committed to seeing the Polkadot vision through.
Of course. I highly trust Gav on his vision from the tech side. I highly admire him. Having seen different protocols, I've been working, as you know, in Ethereum. I have touched the Bitcoin community as well, working with them. I've been helping several companies in Latin America building on Bitcoin. They were super early on Bitcoin, especially in Argentina, where you have been. And so I have seen different ecosystems. For me, as a vision from the tech perspective, for me, Polkadot is the best. I'm not saying this because I'm working on the Web3 Foundation.
Yeah.
Because I have touched the technology before and different ecosystems as well.
Right.
I truly believe this. It's just the fact that we are going into this growing pains. You know, when you're growing, you're like, oh, it's hurting here.
Yeah, right.
But you need to go through those pains sometimes in order to grow.
Yeah, well, it's been fascinating to hear your story, and I think not a lot of people would understand that there are people like you spreading the word of Polkadot, not to retail investors, but to some of the biggest organizations on the planet, and seeing ways that Polkadot can intersect with these established businesses. It's incredible, and I just want to thank you very much for all the work you're doing, connecting us to them, connecting this show to a bunch of interesting people in the ecosystem. We couldn't do it without connectors like you.
More to come.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll talk again.
Yes.
And thanks very much for being on the show.
Thanks to you.